They didn't just steal my college fund. They stole my future, my worth, and handed it all to my reckless brother like I was disposable. At 18, I disappeared. For a decade, no one called, no one searched, no one cared. I built my life from sleeping in a car to running a tech company worth millions. And just when I thought they were gone for good, they showed up, hands out, hearts empty. If you've ever been the forgotten child, the second choice, or the one expected to figure it out alone, this story is for you, because I didn't just survive, I became unstoppable. Zach had been arrested again, this time for crashing his car into a store window while high. She packed everything she owned into 2 bags, left a note that simply read, "Goodbye," and walked out the door without looking back. That night, Claire made a decision that would change her life forever. Her parents didn't call, they didn't chase after her. They let her go just like that. They truly meant to take her future and hand it to the same person who had done nothing but destroy his own. Claire stared at them, waiting for the punchline, but it never came. Their faces were lined with concern, but not for Claire. No, their worry was for Zach's legal future. Claire Morgan was 18, the quiet daughter of a conservative, middle-class family in suburban Illinois. From the outside, they seemed perfectly ordinary, but inside those walls, favoritism rotted everything. Her older brother Zach had always been the center of attention. He was loud, reckless, and constantly in trouble, but their parents, Peter and Linda, saw him as a misunderstood genius, a free spirit finding his way. Claire, in contrast, was the dependable one. She got straight A's, worked part-time at the local library, and kept her head down. Her parents often called her the calm after Zach's storms. 2 weeks before her high school graduation, Claire received an acceptance letter to Holbridge University, a top 20 law school, with a partial scholarship. The rest would be covered by her college fund, a modest account her grandparents had started when she was born. It was supposed to be the start of everything she'd worked for: freedom, identity, and the chance to be something more than her family's backup plan. That illusion began to crack on a Tuesday night. Claire returned home after closing her shift at the library, still in uniform, to find the living room bathed in tense silence. Her parents were seated stiffly on the couch. Zach slouched in the armchair, his left eye bruised, a bandage across his temple. The air smelled like antiseptic and shame. "Sit down, honey," her mother said, voice trembling, but not with sadness. It was panic. Claire sat, her stomach already sinking. Her father cleared his throat. "Zach's had a bit of an accident. He drove through a pharmacy window," Zach muttered. "Apparently, that's frowned upon." He chuckled dryly. Claire's pulse spiked. "Was anyone hurt?" "Thank God no," her mum said quickly, "but he's been charged with reckless endangerment. He tested positive for substances." Claire stared at her brother. He didn't look sorry. He looked bored. A cut on his knuckle was still fresh. "We've talked to a lawyer," Peter continued. "He says with the right legal defense we can get the charges reduced, maybe even dismissed." Claire blinked. "Okay. So what does this have to do with me?" Silence. Her mother reached for her hand. Claire pulled it away. "We need your college fund," her father said flatly, "just until we can refinance the house." Claire's heart dropped. She felt like the floor had disappeared under her feet. "You're taking my college fund for Zach?" "He needs help now," Linda whispered. "We always said family comes first." "So does my future not count?" Claire asked. "Do 4 years of grades and jobs and sacrifice mean nothing? You're strong. You'll find another way, her dad replied. Zach doesn't have your resilience. Zach shrugged. She's right, though. It sucks. But come on, Claire. You're the smart one. You'll land on your feet. Claire looked at her family and realised in that moment she had never truly belonged in it. She stood, hands shaking, and walked upstairs. Her college acceptance letter was still pinned to her corkboard. She took it down, folded it neatly, and packed it in her backpack. That night, she made a plan. She would leave. Not in anger, but in clarity. This house wasn't her home. It was a place that tolerated her until her usefulness expired. The next morning, while everyone slept, she walked out at the front door with nothing but 2 bags and the drive to build a life that would never again depend on anyone who saw her as second best. Claire didn't go quietly. The moment her father uttered the words college fund, she shot up from the couch, fury replacing disbelief. Are you serious? She snapped, voice trembling. You're actually asking me to give up everything I've worked for because Zach crashed another car while high. Peter's face hardened. Lower your voice. Don't make this about you. It is about me, Claire yelled. That fund was mine, my future, not some get-out-of-jail-free card for your golden boy. Linda jumped in, trying to soothe. Claire, sweetie, this isn't the time to be selfish. Your brother is in real trouble. He needs us. Selfish? Claire repeated, stunned. I've been the opposite of selfish for 18 years. Zach, lounging with a bag of frozen peas against his jaw, smirked. You act like you're a saint. I'm the one who needs a second chance, not you. You've had everything handed to you. Handed? Claire turned to him, seething. You mean like how Mum and Dad handed you my future on a silver platter? Peter slammed his fist on the coffee table. Enough! This is a family decision. You're not the only one who matters. The words felt like knives. Claire looked at the people who were supposed to love her and realised they never saw her. She was a utility, a background character in Zach's redemption arc. Without another word, she turned and walked upstairs. Rage boiled beneath her skin, but her mind was clear. She pulled out her duffel bags from the closet and began packing. Essentials only. Clothes, toothbrush, birth certificate. She folded her college acceptance letter with care, slipping it between books she couldn't leave behind. Her hands shook not from sadness, but adrenaline. She wasn't just leaving, she was escaping. On her desk, she pulled a sticky note and wrote in all caps, I've always been second choice. This time, I choose me. She left it on her pillow. The house was quiet when she walked down the stairs. She avoided creaky steps out of habit, her final act of invisibility. In the kitchen, she paused only to grab an apple. A symbolic goodbye to the family that had fed her body but starved her spirit. She walked into the night with no plan and no destination, just away. That was enough. Claire didn't go to a friend's house. She didn't check into a hotel. She turned off her phone, emptied her SIM card and dumped it in a public trash can 2 blocks away. She bought a bus ticket with cash to a city she'd never been to, Portland, Oregon, just far enough, just random enough. As the Greyhound pulled away at 3:15 a.m., Claire stared out the window. She didn't cry. She didn't shake. She just breathed. Nobody knew where she was going, not even Claire. And that was exactly how she wanted it. Back home, the family would wake to silence. Her note would be the only trace she left. Peter would blame her immaturity. Linda would cry, but not for long. Zach would shrug and return to whatever mess he was already making. None of them would call the police. Not at first. She was the dependable one after all. She'd come back eventually, but she didn't. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Claire disappeared not just from the house, but from their world entirely. And in doing so, she finally began to exist in her own. Portland was colder than Claire expected. The rain came sideways, carried by wind that slipped through her thin jacket like needles. She got off the bus with 2 bags and $57 to her name. She didn't know anyone. She hadn't booked a place to stay. The bus depot was open all night. So she sat there until the morning sun filtered through the stained glass windows. By noon, she found a room posted on a community board at a laundromat. $400 a month for a shared basement in a crumbling duplex. The landlord didn't ask questions, just first month's rent in cash. Claire moved in the same day. The walls were thin, the pipes moaned like ghosts, and the window was no bigger than a shoebox. But it had a lock, and that was enough. The mattress smelled like mildew. The shower ran rust orange for the first minute. Still, she whispered to herself, "It's mine." That first week, she walked for hours each day, visiting every business with a help wanted sign. Nobody cared about her grades or her dreams, just if she could work weekends and lift 30 pounds. She landed 3 part-time gigs, cleaning office buildings at dawn, waitressing at a greasy diner in the afternoon, and babysitting for a woman who paid under the table. Her days blurred together. She slept in odd shifts, ate leftovers from the diner, and stretched every dollar like taffy. Her feet ached constantly, and her hands developed calluses. At night, when she crawled into her damp bed, she wrote in a spiral notebook she kept hidden under her mattress. It was the only thing she allowed herself to do just for her. "Still breathing, still moving, that's enough," she scribbled one night. Another time, "Today I cried in a supply closet and still finished my shift. That's a win." Winter crept in. The basement had no insulation. Claire borrowed a space heater from a neighbour, but it tripped the breaker if she used the microwave at the same time. One night, when her room flooded from a busted pipe, she slept in the landlord's detached garage. It smelled of oil and old bicycles, but she laid on the concrete, jacket for a pillow, and whispered, "This is not forever." On her hardest day, when her diner shift ended with a customer throwing a drink at her, Claire almost walked into traffic. But a stranger, a server from the same diner named Rosa, stopped her. Rosa was 30, with tired eyes and a quick laugh. She had a 5-year-old son, Matteo, and worked 2 jobs to keep them fed. She offered Claire a ride home that day. They sat in Rosa's ancient Honda, eating fries from a shared bag, talking about anything but work. Rosa asked no questions about Claire's past. She just listened. By the end of the night, Rosa called her Hermana, sister. It was the first time in months Claire felt seen, not pitied. Rosa introduced her to discount grocery shops, how to sneak free Wi-Fi from library parking lots, and where to get winter clothes at the church's swap nights. Claire started saving again, just coins in a jar, but it was something. She marked her calendar each time she made it through another week. In her journal she wrote, "I don't know if this counts as living, but it's more mine than anything I left behind." She still had nightmares of her father's face twisted in disappointment, of her mother's voice calling her ungrateful, of Zach laughing. But each morning she woke up and kept going, and that, she decided, was power. A month into their friendship, Rosa's son, Matteo, caught a terrible flu. Rosa couldn't afford to miss another shift at the diner, but leaving Matteo alone wasn't an option. Claire offered to cover for her. "I know the basics," she said. "I'll wear your name tag and keep my head down." Rosa hesitated. It was against policy, even risky, but Claire's sincerity broke through. "Just for one day," Rosa whispered. Claire showed up early the next morning in Rosa's uniform, tying her hair back into a low bun. She mimicked Rosa's posture, her smile, her rhythm. The shift was brutal. The diner was slammed with weekend brunch crowds. Claire spilled one coffee, mixed up two orders, but apologised with such humility that customers forgave her instantly. She worked quietly, carefully, with the kind of focus that only comes from desperation. When the shift ended, the manager called her over. Claire's stomach dropped. She braced for a lecture or worse, termination. Instead, the manager looked at her long and hard. "You're not Rosa," he said. She nodded, throat dry. "I'm sorry, Rosa's son was sick. I didn't want her to lose the shift. I'll take whatever punishment you think is fair." He studied her a moment longer. "You're Claire, right? The one who takes extra shifts and doesn't complain?" She blinked. "How do you—" "I pay attention," he said. "Come see me tomorrow." Claire didn't sleep that night. She expected a fine, maybe a call to the police. But the next morning, she returned to the manager's office, heart pounding. To her surprise, he didn't yell. He handed her a folded paper. "Ever heard of Pendrix Systems?" Claire's brow furrowed. "The tech company? The startup upstairs?" "That's the one," he nodded. "They're looking for a temp to assist with their new back-end migration, basic data entry and support. I told them about you." Claire was stunned. "I'm not qualified." "You are," he interrupted. "You mentioned studying coding once, right? Here's your shot." He gave her a phone number and a name. Claire clutched the paper like it was made of gold. That afternoon, she dusted off her old notes, HTML, basic Python, some MySQL, skills she'd once believed were buried for good. She borrowed Rosa's blazer and found an old backpack. She arrived 10 minutes early to the Pendrix office, nerves buzzing like bees in her chest. The office smelled like burnt coffee and ambition. The hiring manager glanced at her resume, paper thin, and asked a few basic logic questions. Claire answered honestly, humbly. "I don't know everything," she said, "but I'm fast, and I'll work harder than anyone." 3 days later, she got the call. Temporary hire, 4 weeks, minimum pay. But it came with a desk, a computer, and her name on the employee log. Rosa screamed with joy when Claire told her. Matteo celebrated with paper streamers and a glitter pen drawing that read, "Go Claire!" Her first day at Pendrix felt like walking into another universe. People wore headphones and sipped kombucha. Terms flew through the air like agile scrum and back-end push. Claire soaked it all in. She arrived early, stayed late, and asked questions. She took notes on everything, Googled every acronym, and watched hours of tutorials after work. The job was simple, entering data, checking error logs, but for Claire it was a doorway, a portal to the life she once dreamed of. Her journal that night read, maybe the door didn't close. Maybe it was just waiting for me to find a window. 2 weeks in, the lead developer approached her. "Hey Claire, I noticed you fixed a batch import bug. That wasn't in your job description." "I saw it throwing a flag," she shrugged. "I had time, so I rewrote the handler." He stared at her. "You rewrote code?" Claire froze. "Did I mess up?" "No," he said slowly. "You solved something I was going to assign next week." From that day, people noticed her. Not just for her story, but her skills. Real, undeniable ability. Claire wasn't just surviving anymore, she was ascending. On the bus ride home that Friday, she clutched her backpack and stared out the window. The streets looked the same, but something inside her had shifted. This wasn't just a win, it was a reminder. Her future hadn't been stolen, it had been delayed, and now it was catching up fast. Claire settled into the rhythm of Pendrix. Each shift brought new challenges, bugs to document, reports to compile, and databases to clean. But it was what she did after work that made the difference. Every night, she curled up on her second-hand mattress, laptop balanced on her knees, fingers typing into the early hours. She revisited coding languages she barely remembered, learning frameworks, debugging her own small apps. She joined online communities, contributed to open source repositories, and built tiny tools that no one asked for. It was her way of reminding herself she still had a mind worth investing in. One evening, while fixing a typo in a colleague's codebase, her supervisor, Marla, peeked over her shoulder. "That's your third undocumented fix this week," she said, half amused, half impressed. "Just trying to help," Claire mumbled, cheeks flushing. Marla smiled. "You're doing more than help. You ever thought about applying to something bigger, like Veritas Loop? They've got open junior roles." Claire froze. Veritas Loop was a rising star in tech, an AI-focused startup making waves in collaborative tools. "I don't think I'm ready." "You're more ready than half the people they've hired," Marla said, handing her the job post. "Just think about it." Claire spent 3 nights hovering over the application form, writing and deleting her resume over and over. She never clicked submit. What she didn't know was that Rosa had other plans. One of the regulars at the diner, Mr. Brantley, a retired systems architect, had taken a liking to Claire's tenacity. He'd once offered to refer her to a friend in tech. Without telling Claire, Rosa and Mr. Brantley dug out her old resume, added the Pendrix experience, and submitted it to Veritas Loop with a glowing referral. A week later, Claire received the email. "We'd like to invite you for an interview." She reread it 3 times before it sank in. Panic set in almost immediately. What if she failed? What if she froze? What if they saw right through her to the scared girl who once scrubbed diner floors and cried in storage closets? Rosa calmed her down. "You're not that girl anymore. You've earned this. Just show them the woman I see every day." Claire borrowed Rosa's blazer again, pulled her hair into a sleek bun, and arrived at Veritas Loop's downtown office 15 minutes early. Her palms were damp, her throat tight. The office was minimalist, humming with soft ambient music and polished floors. Glass walls offered views of coding pods where developers tapped away behind triple monitors. A tall man, in his early 30s, greeted her. "Claire Morgan!" "Yes," she squeaked. "Hi, I'm James. I'm one of the co-founders. I'll be sitting in today." The interview started with standard questions: tech scenarios, logic puzzles, personality checks. Claire's voice wavered at first, but soon steadied. Her hands stopped shaking. Her eyes found focus. Then came the last question. James leaned back and asked, "What made you want to become a developer?" Claire hesitated, then answered honestly, "I didn't. Not at first. I wanted to be a lawyer. But life had other plans. Coding was the only thing that made me feel like I could build something again from nothing." James's expression changed. His gaze sharpened, not with judgment, but recognition. "You don't have to tell me if it's too personal," he said slowly. "But you mentioned things falling apart. Family?" Claire blinked. "Yes, I walked away. They chose someone else over me. I had to start over." James nodded slowly. "Me too. Dad gambled away my college fund. Mum said it wasn't his fault. I left at 17. The room fell into a quiet that didn't feel heavy, but mutual, understanding. I'm rooting for you, James said as he stood to shake her hand, no matter what the outcome. Claire stepped into the elevator afterward, with tears threatening her eyeliner, but not from fear. For once, someone had seen her story and called it strength. Claire got the job at Veritas Loop, entry-level developer. It didn't pay much, but it paid more than she'd ever made, and more importantly, it paid in purpose. She dove into projects with the same fire that got her through nights sleeping in garages. She learned fast, stayed late, fixed things nobody asked her to. By the end of her first year, she wasn't just writing code, she was leading sprints, organising backlog reviews, and mentoring interns. Her title changed from junior developer to software engineer 2. Then again to project manager. She had her own office, a badge that opened more doors. But Claire wasn't content. She saw gaps no one else did, problems in collaboration between remote teams, the chaos of juggling platforms, missed updates, and lost files. She started sketching ideas in her journal, a platform that integrated code, chat, project boards, and deployment into one clean interface. She called it Hivestream. It started as a side project. She coded at night, tested on weekends, asked Rosa and old Pendrick's friends to try early builds. The feedback was raw but promising. She pitched it to Veritas Loop's leadership. They liked the concept but said no, too risky, not aligned with quarterly priorities. Claire didn't push, but she also didn't stop. When Veritas Loop faced an unexpected funding shortfall and began quietly laying off junior staff, Claire saw the writing on the wall. Rather than wait for her turn, she resigned. She thanked James for believing in her. He hugged her tightly and said, "Go build what they don't even know they need yet." She used her savings and freelance gigs to survive. She coded from coffee shops, built a minimum viable product, and emailed everyone she knew for feedback. Investors came knocking early. But Claire had seen what happened when money talked louder than vision. She turned down 2 seed offers, both with aggressive control clauses. She wanted this to be hers. Built not just for profit, but for people like her, those building from nothing. With a shoestring team of 3, Hivestream launched its beta. A few hundred users signed up, then 1,000, then 10. But success made her sloppy. Claire trusted too easily. One of her earliest hires, a charming developer named Josh, had full access to the codebase. He'd been with her since week 2, smart, reliable, or so she thought. Until one Friday morning, Hivestream's servers went dark. The GitHub repo was empty. Slack accounts deactivated. Claire's admin access blocked. She panicked. At first she thought it was a bug, a glitch, but her gut knew better. Josh had stolen the code, rebranded it under a new name, pitched it to a VC who didn't know or didn't care that it was theft. The betrayal hit deeper than business. It was personal. This wasn't just her project, it was her life's second chance. Claire spent 3 days crying, not the delicate kind. Ugly, shaking sobs that left her hollow. Then, on the 4th day, she got up, opened her backup files, built a new repo from scratch, posted a job ad, called in every favour she was owed. She wrote in her journal that night, "You can't steal the soul of a thing, only its shell. I'll build again, better." It wasn't rage that fueled her. It was resolve. She'd lost before. She'd started with nothing, and this time she knew exactly where she was going. When the pandemic hit, Hivestream was still in its infancy, clunky but promising. Claire and her rebuilt team pushed non-stop updates, smoothing bugs, optimizing servers, and rewriting UI from the ground up. Within 6 months, usage exploded. Remote teams needed a cohesive platform, and Hivestream offered exactly that. Daily active users jumped from 10,000 to 100,000, then 500,000. Claire barely slept. She became the face of the brand, hosting webinars, giving interviews, and writing white papers on productivity in distributed teams. Her grit drew attention, first a podcast, then a profile in Tech Radar. Then one morning, Forbes published the headline, Claire Morgan, from homeless to CEO of a 300 mentors startup. The article went viral. It included photos, Claire at her desk, Claire in a hoodie sketching on a whiteboard, Claire laughing with her team. It also included a short paragraph about her estranged upbringing and being forced to walk away at 18. That was all it took. Her inbox flooded, hundreds of messages from strangers, investors, former co-workers, and buried among them emails with subject lines she hadn't seen in over a decade. From Mom, please call us, it's Zach. She stared at them for hours, unread, one after another. All saying the same thing in different fonts. They knew now they'd found her. Days later came the letters, envelopes with her childhood address written in familiar handwriting, postmarked from Ohio. Some opened with Dear Claire and ended with guilt. Others were simply blank on the back with Call us, please. Claire didn't respond. She didn't delete them either. She left them to rot in a digital limbo, unread and unanswered. She told no one, not Rosa, not James, not her new assistant. It was easier to pretend they hadn't reached out. Easier to pretend she wasn't shaken. But at night, she found herself rereading the Forbes article, not out of pride, but fear. Would they come? Would they just show up? Her dreams shifted. She no longer dreamed of sleeping in her car or spilling coffee at the diner. Now she dreamed of the kitchen table, the same one from that night when her father said, "We're going to use your college fund." In the dreams, she tried to run, but her legs wouldn't move. Or she opened her mouth to scream, and only silence came out. Her journal entries turned darker. I don't know what scares me more, that they still think they deserve forgiveness, or that a small part of me wants to give it. Hivestream hit 1 million users. Claire was invited to speak at SXSW, to meet with global CEOs, to join a panel on female founders. But even on stage, dressed in tailored suits and heels that cost more than her first paycheck, she felt like the girl hiding in the garage under a damp coat. After her talk at a major conference, she returned to her hotel room and found a bouquet waiting at the door. The note read, "We saw the article. We're proud of you. Please talk to us." No name, just a phone number with an Ohio area code. She dropped the flowers in the trash and stood frozen in the doorway. Her assistant asked later why she didn't come to the networking dinner. Claire said she was tired. But the truth was, she couldn't breathe. She started scanning crowds again, every airport terminal, every conference lobby, expecting to see Peter's stern face, Linda's trembling hands, or Zach's smug grin. She double-checked the security protocols at Hivestream's office. She asked the front desk to screen all unannounced visitors, but the dread didn't fade. It nested in her chest like something alive, something clawing. And though Claire had conquered code bases and boardrooms, there was one thing she still didn't know how to debug: her past. The investor's name was Jonathan Marks. His emails were concise, respectful, and clearly knowledgeable about Hivestream's market space. He said he represented a boutique tech fund looking to support minority-led innovation. Claire wasn't looking for funding, but something about the The tone felt different, not pushy like most. He mentioned wanting to meet in person just to talk. Curiosity got the better of her. They arranged to meet at a quiet rooftop cafe downtown. Claire arrived 5 minutes early as always, dressed sharp but neutral. She ordered black coffee and waited. 15 minutes passed, then 20. She was about to leave when she saw him walking in, taller than she remembered, heavier, but unmistakably Zach. Claire froze. Her hands gripped the coffee cup tight enough to crack it. Zach walked with that same casual arrogance, but something in his face was different, aged, unsure. "Hey, Claire," he said, stopping 2 feet from her table. "Long time." She didn't speak. She couldn't. Her breath was stuck between disbelief and fury. Zach gestured to the chair. "Can I sit?" She finally managed. "Jonathan Marks?" "Yeah, sorry about that. It was the only way I figured you'd meet me." Claire stood abruptly. "You catfished your own sister posing as a venture capitalist." "I had to see you," he said, hands raised. "Just hear us out, please." "Us?" she asked, heart already sinking. That's when she saw them, Peter and Linda standing near the elevator, awkward and out of place. Linda clutched a small purse like it was armour. Peter stared at the floor. Claire turned cold. This was a setup. Zach stepped between her and the exit. "They just want to talk. We all do. Please." Claire's voice was ice. "You tricked me. Again." "We didn't know how else to reach you," Linda whispered. "You never answered because I didn't want to," Claire snapped. "You lost that right 10 years ago." Peter finally looked up. "You've built something incredible, Claire. You should be proud." She stared at them, the ghosts of a family she once begged to notice her. Now they were here in her city, using deceit to earn a conversation. "This isn't pride, it's survival," Claire said, "and you 3 are not part of it." Zach looked wounded. "We were wrong about everything. Dad said you'd figure it out, and you did. We underestimated you." "No," Claire said slowly. "You never saw me, and now you're hoping this success, this money, can fix what you broke." Linda cried, quietly. "We miss you. Every day." Claire wanted to scream, wanted to say the things that lived in her journals, that haunted her dreams. But instead she said, "You didn't come here because you missed me. You came because you saw Forbes." "That's not true," Peter said, but even he didn't sound convinced. Zach reached into his jacket, pulled out a folded piece of paper. "We wrote letters. Every birthday, every year. We kept them, just in case." Claire didn't take the paper. Words mean nothing without action, and your actions, lies, theft, betrayal. Zach's hands dropped. "I'm sober now. I've been clean for a year." Claire nodded once. "Good. Then you'll understand when I say this. No is a complete sentence." She stepped around them. None of them followed. They just stood there. 3 shadows in a life she no longer belonged to. That night, Claire wrote one sentence in her journal. "Sometimes the past doesn't knock. It breaks in wearing a mask." A week after the rooftop ambush, Claire received another message, this time from a local Ohio area code with no name, just a voicemail. "Claire, please, we need your help. It's Dad. He fell from a ladder, can't work. The mortgage is behind. They're going to take the house. Zach's in a custody fight. We're drowning." Claire played the message twice, then once more in the dark at 3 a.m. She didn't cry. She didn't even speak. She just stared into the ceiling and felt the weight of history pressing down again. She finally agreed to meet. Not because of guilt, because she needed closure. They met in a neutral, co-working space Claire rented last minute. No coffee shop drama, no public spectacle. Her parents looked worse than last time, older, more frayed. Zach looked thinner, eyes sunken with exhaustion. None of them met her gaze at first. Peter spoke first. "We're not here to trick you, just to tell the truth." Linda followed. "Your dad can't work anymore. He's on disability, but it's not enough. The house is 2 months behind." Zach added, "I've been clean. I have a kid now, a daughter. Her name's Lila. Her mom is taking me to court to keep her from me." Claire sat across from them, fingers steepled, face unreadable. "And you want money?" They didn't deny it, just silence. "Tell me," Claire said calmly, "if I were still waiting tables and living in a rented basement, would you have found me? Would you have called then?" No one answered. Linda wiped her eyes. Peter looked away. Zach finally muttered, "We didn't know how." "You knew how to take from me," Claire said. "At 18, you knew exactly how to withdraw every cent meant for my future." Zach's voice rose. "That was Dad and Mom's decision. And you thanked me. Remember that?" Claire's tone didn't rise, but the chill was unmistakable. "At least I didn't abandon my family," Zach shot back. Claire flinched, then laughed bitterly. "You didn't have to. You were the favourite. You were always forgiven. I was just the insurance policy." "That's not fair," Peter murmured. "We made mistakes." Claire's voice cracked just once. "You made choices. I lived with them." They fell into silence again. Claire leaned back, staring at the ceiling like it held answers. "So now you're here because life hit hard, because the system failed you, because you're afraid of losing your home, your custody, your comfort, and you think I owe you, what? Redemption? A check?" "No," Linda said softly, "we just want you back." "Then why does this only happen now?" Claire asked. "Why not when I was invisible and hungry and scared?" Zach's jaw tightened. "Because we were ashamed, okay? We knew we screwed up." Claire studied him. He looked like a man who'd run out of deflections. A man trying, but still not fully changed. "You have a daughter now," Claire said. "Do you love her?" "More than anything." "Then maybe you finally understand what it means to be responsible for someone else's future." Zach nodded slowly. "I do." Claire turned to Peter and Linda. "Do you remember Grandma's savings bonds? The ones she made for my college fund?" Linda nodded tearfully. "She believed in you." "And you spent them for Zach," Claire said. "Tell me, did she ever find out?" Peter shook his head. "We told her the market crashed." Claire closed her eyes. "Of course you did." Zach reached into his coat again. "You don't have to give us money, but would you meet Lila someday?" Claire's hand trembled, but she hid it under the table. She didn't answer right away. After a long pause, she said, "I'll think about it, but not today." They nodded. No one pushed. When they left, Claire sat in the quiet room another hour. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just stared at the wall and tried to remember how it felt to be loved without conditions. Claire spent 2 sleepless nights drafting the contract. It was harsh by some standards, blunt and cold, but she wasn't interested in family anymore. She was interested in truth. The document was simple. She would pay off the mortgage, cover Peter's medical bills, and fund a modest trust for Lila. In return, they were to publicly acknowledge what they had done, on record. The contract required them to release a formal statement to the press, admitting they had taken Claire's college fund, stating she owed them nothing, and affirming that she was no longer part of their family in any legal or social capacity. Her assistant questioned the morality. Claire replied, "If they want closure in dollars, they'll pay with honesty." They met again, this time in Hivestream's legal boardroom. Claire wore no makeup, no performance, just steel. Peter looked confused, Zach stunned, but Linda, oddly, read through the contract without hesitation. "This is your condition?" Linda asked. Claire nodded once. Claire expected hesitation, rage, tears, maybe even defiance, but instead Linda took the pen and signed without blinking. Peter stammered, "Wait, don't we want to talk about—" "If it gets us the money, it's worth it," Linda said calmly. "We need to survive." The moment was ice water. Claire's chest tightened. Not in anger, but something worse. Numbness. Zach refused to sign at first. "This is messed up," he said. "You're asking us to erase you." "You erased me a decade ago," Claire replied. "Now I'm giving you the option to make it official." He hesitated, looked at Lila's photo in his wallet, then took the pen. Just before he could press down, Claire stopped him. "Don't, not yet." Everyone froze. "I needed to know," Claire said quietly. "I needed to see how far you'd go, whether it was about me or just the money." "Claire," Peter tried. "You passed," she said, "just not the test you thought." She stood and tore the contract in half, then in quarters, dropped the pieces in the trash. "What are you doing?" Linda shouted. "We agreed." "No," Claire said, voice shaking but firm. "You accepted. There's a difference." "We need that money," Linda barked. Claire met her gaze for the last time. "And I needed parents. We don't always get what we need." Zach stood. "You're punishing Lila. She's innocent." "Then don't make her your excuse," Claire snapped. "Be a better father. Don't repeat the cycle." Peter's face fell into his hands. He said nothing. Claire turned to her assistant. "Escort them out and mark their numbers as blocked." Linda screamed after her. "You'll regret this. Money won't love you back." Claire didn't look back, just whispered to herself, "But at least it won't lie." That night, Claire returned home and rewrote her will, cutting her birth family from every document. She named Rosa and her daughter as beneficiaries. In her journal, she wrote, "Love isn't owed, it's earned, and forgiveness without remorse is just enablement." The press never got the story, Claire never leaked it. Some wounds didn't need spectacle, they just needed silence. She moved Hivestream's HQ to a different building, changed her personal email, rented a new apartment with fewer memories and more light. 1 month later, she received a postcard from an unknown address. It simply read, "For what it's worth, I'm trying, Z." She didn't throw it away, but she didn't reply either. She taped it inside her journal. Below it, she wrote, "Trying is not the same as changing, but it's a start." Almost overnight, the headlines shifted from tech innovation to personal scandal. Hivestream CEO, called heartless for shunning her own parents, splashed across the front pages of major outlets. BuzzFeed ran a clickbait piece titled 10 Coldest CEO Moves of 2025, featuring Claire Morgan's story at the top. VentureBeat published an analysis about the danger of mixing family drama with investor relations. On LinkedIn, partners debated whether a leader's private life should factor into boardroom decisions. Comment sections overflowed with heated debates about moral obligations versus personal boundaries. Even niche finance newsletters reprinted the same snarky quote, "Family first, unless you're worth millions." Within hours, social media erupted. Twitter threads tracked Claire's every public move. Instagram stories reposted screenshots of her old interviews. And YouTube reaction videos speculated about what type of person could walk away from their own mother. Hashtags like "Your Heartless CEO" and "Family Betrayal" trended nationally. Reddit moderators locked threads after flame wars erupted between those who saw Claire as a cold opportunist and those who viewed her as a survivor who refused to be exploited again. The sustained barrage of negativity flooded her mentions, drowning out even the most positive posts she'd ever received. Back at Hivestream's headquarters, board members convened an emergency session. Senior executives watched share prices wobble on live ticker feeds, reflecting investors' growing unease. Several key partners quietly delayed contract renewals until clarity emerged. A few venture partners issued guarded statements to the press, emphasizing their confidence in Hivestream's technology, but withholding full endorsement of its leadership. In hushed lounges and legal offices, counsel debated whether to preempt the story with a public relations campaign or ride out the storm. "Do we need a CEO statement? A brand ambassador?" someone asked. Another replied, "If she speaks, she risks making it worse." Claire monitored the fallout from her glass-walled office, high above the San Francisco skyline. Years ago, she would have felt exhilarated by this level of attention. Now, she felt exposed and raw. Late at night, she combed through crisis management playbooks, but found no guidance for a story so deeply personal. There was no spin that could mask the core of her decision, a decade's worth of betrayal that she refused to revisit. She recognized a bitter irony. She had built Hivestream on ideals of transparency and merit, yet now she found herself defending a boundary she could not justify to the masses. Then, like a flare in the darkness, came Rosa's open letter. Published on Medium, it was titled "The Real Price of Love: Why Claire Morgan's Decision Was Not Heartless." In vivid detail, Rosa described how Claire had once given her last dollar to cover a bus ticket, how Claire had trudged home in a snowstorm to deliver hot soup, and how she had patiently tutored Rosa's son in math at midnight after nearly collapsing from exhaustion. The letter portrayed Claire as someone whose generosity extended far beyond family expectations, a woman who gave until she had nothing left. Within hours, the letter had tens of thousands of reads, shares, and heartfelt comments. Inspired by Rosa's solidarity, a small coalition of Claire's earliest friends and co-workers began sharing stories under the hashtag #RIStandWithClaire. A former roommate posted photos of rainy streets and hastily packed duffel bags, captioned, "She made that her future." An early developer remembered Claire teaching him advanced JavaScript patterns late at night after coding all day, calling her the mentor I never saw coming from a CEO. A local non-profit, Leaders in Portland, shared memories of Claire volunteering at eviction prevention drives. Each anecdote added nuance, shifting the narrative from cold calculation to resilient compassion. Within days, public sentiment began to turn. Tech journalists published follow-up pieces probing whether our collective rush to judge a female leader had been too harsh. A New York Times columnist wrote about the hidden wounds of those who build from nothing, questioning whether success should cancel out childhood trauma. Podcasts hosted panel discussions on familial obligation versus self-preservation. Even some of Claire's harshest online critics admitted they lacked enough context to condemn her completely. The conversation evolved from outrage to a more balanced debate about how we define family, loyalty, and self-worth. Emerging from the media firestorm, Claire recorded a brief video statement for Hivestream's blog. "I built Hivestream to empower people to reclaim their work and their lives. My personal decisions reflect a journey from silence to self-respect. I stand by my values and appreciate those who understand the complexities of family, healing, and choice." She posted it without fanfare, no flashy graphics, no celebrity endorsements, just her voice and her words. Within hours, the company's stock steadied, partner calls resumed, and a new wave of business negotiations resumed. Claire realised that, like a controlled burn in a forest, the media blaze had cleared away doubt and laid fertile ground for new growth. In that moment, she felt what she had not felt in years, the fierce liberating power of standing on her own terms. The firestorm had barely cooled when the next blow landed. Claire's assistant walked into her office one morning, holding a news clipping with pale fingers. Zach Morgan arrested for financial fraud, the headline read. He had been caught running a pyramid scheme, promising quick returns to desperate families in Ohio. The numbers were staggering. Hundreds of thousands vanished into his pockets, leaving neighbours and co-workers bankrupt. Claire's gut clenched. It wasn't shock. Not anymore. It was the exhaustion of watching a pattern repeat until it felt carved into stone. She folded the paper once, twice, and slid it into her drawer without a word. That night, while reviewing Hivestream's quarterly reports, she received a letter slipped under her apartment door. The handwriting was unmistakable. Her mother's looping cursive, trembling, but still familiar. Claire, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I cannot live with the shame. Your father is broken, Zach is lost, and I failed you as a mother. If you have any heart left for us, please come home one last time. Claire's heart raced. For a moment, she was 18 again, standing in that kitchen, begging them to see her. Without allowing herself to think, she packed a bag and booked a last-minute flight to Ohio. The house looked smaller when she pulled into the cracked driveway, weeds pushing through the cement. The curtains were drawn, the door was unlocked. She stepped inside, calling out softly, "Mom?" Silence. The living room was empty, stripped of warmth. No family photos, no clutter, not even the old sofa she remembered. She moved down the hallway, each step heavier than the last. The letter had been bait, and she was the catch. Her mother was not lying lifeless in some tragic scene. She was not even there. The house was hollow, an echo chamber of betrayal. A setup, a manipulation. Claire dropped her bag and stood in the centre of the bare floor. Memories rose uninvited. Zach laughing with his friends while she washed dishes, her father's voice booming about family first, her mother signing away her future without a tear. The air smelled like dust and abandonment. Tears stung her eyes, not because she missed them, but because she finally understood the depth of their desperation. They would fake a death to pull her back. They would exploit grief itself if it meant another chance to reel her in. For the first time in years, Claire spoke aloud into the silence. Her voice was steady, but it cracked around the edges. I forgive you for every stolen dollar, for every insult, for every night I thought I wasn't enough. I forgive you. She paused, her breath shaking. Then she added louder, each word like a stone laid down to build her own boundary. But I am not your daughter anymore. The words echoed through the empty house, bouncing off bare walls like a final decree. Claire wiped her face, picked up her bag, and walked out. She closed the door gently, almost tenderly, as though she was tucking in the ghost of a family that no longer existed. Outside, the Ohio air felt heavier, thicker than the San Francisco breeze she'd grown used to. She stood on the porch for a moment, watching the neighborhood that had once been her entire world. Children's laughter drifted from 2 houses down, and for a heartbeat she wondered what her life would have been if love had lived here. But love hadn't. Not the kind that nurtured, not the kind that believed. only the kind that demanded, took, and lied. Claire walked down the steps, her heels clicking like punctuation on the final chapter. She didn't look back. On the flight home, she opened her journal and wrote, "Closure doesn't come when they apologize. It comes when you decide the story is over." She closed the book, leaned back in her seat, and for the first time in years, slept without dreams. The silence after Ohio was heavier than any headline or confrontation. For weeks, Claire carried the weight of that empty house like an unspoken question. She had closed the door, but the story still lived inside her, unfinished, restless. Hivestream thrived, its user base doubling again, investors buzzing with excitement. But Claire felt a gnawing truth. Success without healing was just another kind of exile. One night, Rosa found her sitting in her office long past midnight, surrounded by crumpled notes and empty coffee cups. "You're still fighting ghosts," Rosa said gently. Claire nodded. She was tired of carrying the narrative that belonged to her family, tired of being painted as a villain or a survivor, depending on the headline. For once, she wanted to tell her own story, not to justify, not to accuse, but to set herself free. So Claire began to write. At first, the words came haltingly, as if her pen feared betraying secrets long buried. She wrote about the kitchen table where her parents stole her future, the bus station where she chose escape, the mildew-stained basement where she scrawled "still breathing" in her notebook, and the rooftop cafe where Zach walked in under a false name. She wrote with honesty, brutal and unfiltered, refusing to edit her pain into something palatable. Her working title was "The Piece I Chose." Page after page, she stripped away the noise of public opinion and captured the heartbeat of her truth. "Being abandoned isn't a sentence," she wrote in one chapter. "Sometimes it's an invitation to meet the version of yourself you would have never found otherwise." Writing did not feel like revenge. It felt like survival. She realized she wasn't trying to punish her family anymore. She was trying to rescue the girl who once believed she was unworthy of love. The book became her lifeline, a bridge between the broken child and the woman who had built an empire. When she finally shared the manuscript with Rosa, her friend cried through the first 3 chapters. "You have to publish this," Rosa said, "not for them, for everyone who has ever been told they're second best." Her publisher marketed it cautiously at first, uncertain how readers would respond to a CEO laying bare her darkest scars. But when The Piece I Chose hit shelves, it sold out in its first week. Reviews poured in from people across the world. Children estranged from their parents, adults who had clawed their way out of toxic households, even business leaders who admitted that behind their glossy resumes were stories of survival. Claire didn't attend the launch party. She stayed home, curled on her sofa, watching sales charts tick upward while sipping tea. For the first time, her success didn't feel like armour. It felt like connection. She had given her pain shape, and in doing so, she had given others a mirror. Hivestream's numbers soared in parallel, not because the book directly boosted sales, but because people began to see the company differently. It wasn't just software, it was a testament to resilience. Employees walked taller, knowing their CEO had faced storms worse than any server crash. Users posted reviews, calling Hivestream a platform built on grit. Even skeptical investors softened, saying that Claire's honesty proved her authenticity as a leader. Claire found herself on new stages, book festivals, mental health panels, survivor networks. Unlike the sleek tech conferences, these events felt raw. human. She wasn't a CEO there. She was just Claire, a woman who had been hurt and had chosen to heal. She ended every talk with the same line. Abandonment isn't the end. Sometimes it's the beginning of who you're meant to be. Every time she said it, she felt lighter. The truth was no longer a burden she carried in silence. It was a gift she shared. And in that, she finally felt the peace she had been chasing for a decade. 2 months after the release of The Peace I Chose, Claire's office began receiving letters by the dozens. Some were typed, some handwritten, some scribbled on notebook paper, smudged with tears. They came from strangers who had read her book and found their own stories reflected in its pages. Some thanked her for her courage. Others simply confessed that they too had been the forgotten child. One afternoon, her assistant brought in a stack of envelopes, setting them neatly on Claire's desk. Claire sifted through them, offering polite smiles until one caught her attention. It was written in blue ink, the handwriting small and uneven, the way a teenager might write. She opened it carefully. Dear Claire, I'm 16. My parents told me I was a mistake, and most days I believe them. They spend money on my brothers, but call me selfish if I ask for school supplies. Last week I was going to run away. Then I found your book at the library. I read it in one night. You said being abandoned isn't the end. It can be the beginning. That saved me. Because now I want to start my beginning too. Thank you for showing me I matter. Love, a girl who believes again. Claire's vision blurred. She pressed the paper against her chest, as if holding it closer might somehow hold the girl too. For years, she had wondered if sharing her pain would only reopen wounds. Now she knew telling her story had given someone else permission to keep living. She walked to the window of her office, looking out at the city sprawling beneath her. Towers glimmered in the afternoon light, cars streamed like veins of energy, and somewhere down there, millions of lives unfolded, each carrying silent battles. For the first time she felt entirely still, no tension in her jaw, no weight between her shoulders, just breath, just peace. She exhaled slowly, almost like a prayer. That night, she wrote in her journal, "If my story saved even one life, then every tear I ever shed was worth it." Weeks later, as Hivestream prepared for its next product launch, Claire was in the middle of a board presentation when her phone buzzed. She normally ignored calls during meetings, but this one flashed with an unknown number, and an instinct told her to answer. She excused herself, stepping into the hallway. "Hello?" The voice on the other end was small, high-pitched, uncertain. Hi. Is this Aunt Claire?" Claire froze, the world narrowing to the sound of a child's breath. "Yes," she said carefully. "Who is this?" "My name's Lila," the little girl said. "Daddy says you're my aunt." "Are you?" Claire's chest tightened. She leaned against the wall, sliding slowly down until she sat on the floor. Her brother's daughter, the child he had begged her to meet, the one she had refused to let herself imagine. "Yes, Lila," she whispered. "I'm your Aunt Claire." There was a pause. Then the girl giggled softly, as if relieved. "I just wanted to hear your voice. Daddy said you're really smart. He said, you make things that help people talk to each other. Is that true?" Claire's throat closed. Zach had told her about her, spoken of her, even with all his failures in terms of pride. "Yes," Claire managed. "That's true." Another pause. Then Lila asked, "Do you think we could talk again sometime, just us? Daddy doesn't know I called?" Claire closed her eyes. The city outside hummed, but inside her chest, something new stirred. A thread of connection, not tangled in lies or guilt, but in possibility. "Yes," Claire said softly, We can talk again." After the call ended, she sat there for a long time, staring at her reflection in the glass wall across the hallway. For years, she had sworn off the word family, carving it out of her life like a cancer. Yet here was a child, innocent, unbroken, reaching across the gap with nothing but curiosity and hope. Claire smiled through her tears. This was not reconciliation with the past. It was something else, a fragile beginning, separate from the wreckage, untouched by old debts. She whispered to herself, "The peace I chose is still mine. But maybe I can share it now.